Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. By now you all know me, but if not, my name's Mario. I put out videos primarily on clinical research, and this is a clinical research video. And in this video, I'm going to talk all about CRC to CRA bridge programs, or Clinical Research Coordinator to Clinical Research Associate bridge programs. I'm going to talk about what they are, who should apply, and I'm going to spend the most time on the types of questions that'll be asked at this sort of interview. So if that's of interest to you, stay tuned. As always, before I get started on the main topic, I need to remind you to take a moment and smash that like button. And all right, and now that you've done that, let's get started with today's topic. So what is a CRC to CRA bridge program? A CRC to CRA bridge program is programs designed to take someone that has worked at a clinical site for a year or two or longer and really fill in their knowledge gaps and bring them up to speed to be a clinical research associate. A lot of these programs exist at big clinical research organizations, but they may also exist at smaller CROs as well as pharma and biotech firms. So be on the lookout. The ones that are popularized and well-known tend to be the ones at the bigger CROs. Given a choice, I would recommend one of those because big CROs tend to have a lot of training resources, and they also tend to be very good at knowing what a CRC knows and what a CRC doesn't know, and how to build the knowledge to make them effective CRAs. All right, so who should apply to a bridge program? This, in my opinion, is someone that has ideally 2 years of CRC experience or more. If you are a nurse, a foreign medical graduate, or someone with a very strong clinical background, you may start being considered after 1 year of CRC experience. But in an ideal world, I would say 2 years is where you will start to get hits and people will start being interested in interviewing you for bridge programs. I should say this is all changing with supply demand of CRAs out there. And I know some programs go for less experienced. When I was looking at these programs, they actually went toward the more experienced end. So that changes. But I would say 2 years is your safe mark. All right. So now the main topic, likely what most people are interested in. Once you do get to these interviews, what sort of questions are asked? So I'll break this down into different sections. The very first type of questions you're going to get are the standard questions that you'll get at every single interview and that you should prep for. Why are you interested in being a CRA, and why are you interested in this organization? So if you're going to answer the question, why are you interested in being a CRA, explain a little bit of your background, what interests you in the job, and how you've gotten to the point where you're applying for these. So in my case, I was a coordinator at Dana-Farber in pediatric oncology for 2 years. I was the lead coordinator then at Stanford for a year. I oversaw the team of coordinators. As I built my clinical research knowledge, I realized from the hospital side, I sort of understood how everything operated, and I had limited career growth. And I really wanted to see how things worked from the pharma end. So I was at the right juncture to make a transition. That's why I was looking at CRA positions. I also felt that I was able to travel, had good oncology knowledge, and really had a good relationship with my monitors. So I would be good with my attention to detail to SDV. I understood regulatory. I understood IP. So I believed I was a great candidate to be a CRA. So that was me and why I wanted to be a CRA. The next question about why this organization. Take some time, research the mission statement of the organization, research their core values, and come up with an answer that is based on their mission statement and their core values and why you would be an excellent fit within that organization working toward that goal. All right, so now those are covered. Then you'll get the usual behavioral sort of questions that come up, things like strengths and weaknesses, or something of a general nature, maybe specifics about how you handle yourself in a difficult situation, how you deal with difficult sites. All those questions fall into this next bucket, which some forms can all come under the title of how do you do something. Including strengths and weaknesses are basically what are your strengths and weaknesses, but then how do you deal with difficult sites? How do you deal with difficult situations? How do you deal with time management? How do you deal with competing priorities? Be ready for those kind of questions. The last bucket of questions that I think are pretty common for this kind of an interview are the ones that test your clinical research knowledge. So be on the lookout for these questions. But these are the questions that are the most important because you are not coming in as a clinical research naive person. You are expected to know a lot of the basics and probably a little bit more. In a lot of the videos, I talk about how much I love the looking through the ICH GCP regulations, familiarize yourself with a little bit of that, know about regulatory, what the components of a regulatory bind are, understand investigational product, IP, how accountability works, understand when you're doing SDV, how does that work? You show up to a site, you pick up a patient's chart, what's the first thing you do? That's a question that's going to be asked pretty often, and you should know pretty much off the bat that that question is asking you to make sure that you look at the informed consent form first. You need to know that before you start looking at any data, you need to confirm that the informed consent is there, that it's correctly signed, that it's completed, and then you can begin looking at the subject's data. You need to make sure they consented to that. They may ask you what are the components of completing the SDV within a system in the sense that what are the different types of SDV that exist. So you may have heard of 100% SDV, targeted SDV. They may ask you what are the differences between all those types of SDV, different types of monitoring, if you're familiar with the differences between remote monitoring, on-site monitoring, what sort of monitoring visits you've had as a CRC, and things of that. If you claim knowledge on a specific disease area, be ready for questions about that disease area. For example, when I became a CRA, had worked in oncology for 3 years, so I claimed to know oncology well. The first thing I was asked was about RECIST. So if you claim knowledge in a specific disease area, know that area well, you will be tested on that. So that is something else I would say you should be aware of. And then just make sure in this interview that you have rehearsed, that you're confident, and that you can think on your feet. They will ask you questions that may throw you off. For example, a question that at an interview once threw me off, and I think I've mentioned this, is tell me about a time you made a mistake. So that was something that I wasn't expecting. I hadn't prepped for, so I had to think on the fly to come up with an answer to a time I made a mistake. And of course, when you're asked a question like that, you want to make sure you say what you did to remediate it, why it will never happen in the future, and what you learned from it. So make sure your answers are covering those bases. If there's a question where there's something negative, make sure you turn around and end it on a positive. For example, if you're asked what your weakness is, first, don't say anything related to clinical research too strongly. For example, don't say you don't have attention to detail, you'll never get this job. Don't say you don't like to travel, you probably never get the job. So those are core requirements. But you can say something like, when I work across multiple projects, sometimes I have issues figuring out the priority of different things. One of the ways I've learned to deal with this is to write things out and try to list them in priority. So I create my own triage. And over my course of my career, I've learned that I can benefit greatly from help from the different teams understanding the importance. Because in my experience, when I first started, everyone said that everything was important and had to be done right now. So it became overwhelming. But over time, I've learned to deal with the weakness of not necessarily being able to prioritize with these systems that I've created. There you go. So that was something that I started. This is a potential weakness. This is how I've remediated it. And this is how I go about it in the future. Don't end on a negative, no matter what the question is. So try to make sure you're ending on a positive note. Well, I think those are the high-level topics that you will get asked at CRC to CRA bridge interview. Hopefully this is helpful. If you found this useful, please take a moment. If you haven't already, smash that like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.